In a world where justice is meant to be blind, one unexpected arrest would expose just how easily assumptions can turn lawful authority into dangerous misconduct. Welcome back to Swift Tale, where real-life stories meet powerful lessons. And if you're visiting for the very first time, let me ask you this. Have you liked, shared, and subscribed yet? Because today's story is one you won't want to miss. It all began on an ordinary evening when a black woman driving home was suddenly pulled over, accused of stealing her own vehicle, and handcuffed in front of shocked bystanders. What neither the arresting officer nor the watching crowd knew was that the woman he treated like a criminal wasn't just innocent. She was a respected judge who would step into her courtroom the very next morning wearing her robes, leaving that same officer speechless, trembling, and nearly in tears. This story matters because it reveals the consequences of bias, the importance of restraint, and the power of truth to expose everything hidden behind assumptions. So settle in, because what happened in the hours before and after that arrest will leave you stunned. Judge Elena Brooks was the kind of woman whose presence commanded respect long before she ever stepped into a courtroom. Born into a hard-working family, she was raised by parents who instilled in her a deep belief in justice, empathy, and resilience, values that would later shape her entire career. Despite facing obstacles at every stage of her life, from financial struggles in college to the subtle discrimination she encountered as a young black attorney, Elena never allowed adversity to dim her determination. Over the years, she built a reputation for fairness, wisdom, and unwavering integrity, becoming one of the most respected judges in her district. Colleagues admired her sharp mind, defendants respected her balanced judgment, and the community saw her as a symbol of what justice should look like: calm, firm, and deeply human. On the evening she was arrested, she had just left a community outreach program she personally funded to help young people navigate the legal system. Little did she know that despite her lifetime commitment to upholding the law, she was about to become the victim of a gross misjudgment that would reveal just how fragile dignity can be in the face of bias. Officer Mark Daniels had always believed he was destined to rise quickly through the ranks, but the reality of police work had worn him down far more than he liked to admit. Long shifts, endless paperwork, and constant pressure from his superiors had turned him into someone who valued quick decisions over careful judgment. Though not a bad man at heart, Daniels often struggled with impatience and a tendency to assume the worst, a habit made worse by the stress he carried like a second uniform. He wanted to prove himself, to show he was tough, decisive, and capable of handling any situation, but that ambition sometimes clouded his ability to see people clearly. His colleagues knew him as the officer who reacted fast but not always wisely. And on the night he encountered Judge Elena Brooks, that mixture of fatigue, pressure, and unchecked bias pushed him toward a mistake that would become the most humiliating moment of his career. He saw a suspicious vehicle, a driver who didn't fit the profile he imagined, and without pausing to think, he convinced himself he was stopping a criminal, never realizing he was actually about to arrest a woman who had dedicated her life to upholding the very laws he was sworn to enforce. It all began with a routine dispatch, one that should have been handled with caution, not aggression. Officer Daniels heard a radio alert about a possible stolen SUV matching the general description of a dark-colored vehicle seen leaving a parking garage earlier that evening. The report was vague, incomplete, and based on a witness who admitted they weren't entirely sure. Still, Daniels seized on it as an opportunity to prove his vigilance. As fate would have it, Judge Elena Brooks was driving her own SUV home from the community center, exhausted yet satisfied from a long day of mentoring local teens. Her vehicle happened to be the same make and color as the one mentioned in the alert, nothing more than coincidence. But to Daniels, already tense and eager to make an arrest, coincidence looked like guilt. When he spotted her car at a stoplight, he immediately assumed he had found the suspect. Without bothering to verify the license plate or wait for proper confirmation, he hit his sirens and pulled her over. What should have been a simple check quickly spiraled into something far more serious, fueled not by evidence, but by a dangerous mix of stress, assumptions, and a desire to act first and question later. When Judge Brooks heard the sirens behind her, she eased her SUV to the side of the road, assuming it was just a routine stop. She had nothing to hide, her registration was current, her plates were clean, and she had never even received a speeding ticket. But the moment Officer Daniels approached her window, she sensed something was wrong. His hand hovered near his holster, his tone sharp and commanding as he demanded her ID without so much as a greeting. Elena remained calm, politely introducing herself and explaining that she had just left a community legal program, but Daniels barely listened. He interrupted her, insisting the vehicle was reported stolen and refusing to consider her explanation. When she offered her registration and insurance, he dismissed it as easily forged. His voice grew louder, more confrontational, drawing the attention of nearby pedestrians. Despite her attempts to reason with him, Daniels treated every word she spoke as suspicious. Elena kept her hands visible, her tone steady, but internally she felt a sting. This wasn't about a stolen car. It was about an officer who had made up his mind before checking a single fact. And with each passing second, it became painfully clear that this stop was spiraling towards something far more humiliating than she ever expected. Officer Daniels' impatience reached its breaking point when Elena calmly asked him to double-check the vehicle's registration instead of jumping to conclusions. Instead of pausing to reassess, he took her confidence as defiance, convincing himself she was trying to talk her way out of it. With a sudden, decisive motion, he ordered her out of the vehicle. Shock rippled through Elena, but she complied, stepping onto the pavement with her hands slightly raised to avoid escalating the situation. Bystanders began to gather, whispering as they filmed the encounter on their phones. Daniels, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and assumption, grabbed her wrists and snapped on the handcuffs, ignoring her repeated offers to provide proof of ownership. The cold metal bit into her skin as he pushed her toward the patrol car, treating her as though she were a dangerous offender instead of a respected judge. Elena felt humiliation wash over her, not because she was guilty, but because she knew exactly what was happening. She was being reduced to a stereotype, her identity and dignity stripped away by an officer who never gave her a chance. Even as she was placed in the back seat of the patrol car, she maintained her composure, silently praying the truth would surface. Because deep down, she understood something the officer didn't. This moment would not end the way he expected. When Elena arrived at the station, the atmosphere shifted almost immediately. Officers behind the front desk paused as Daniels escorted her in, their eyes widening as they took in her calm posture, her professional clothing, and the quiet dignity she carried even in handcuffs. Something about her didn't fit the profile of a car thief, and the whispers began spreading before Daniels even finished the paperwork. Still determined to follow protocol, he processed her like any other suspect, fingerprints, booking photos, personal belongings taken and catalogued. Elena cooperated without complaint, though humiliation burned beneath her composed exterior. Meanwhile, a clerk ran her information through the system, expecting to find a criminal record. Instead, the screen returned spotless. No warrants, no priors, not even a speeding violation. Moments later, another officer confirmed that the SUV was not stolen, had never been reported stolen, and belonged legally to Elena Brooks. The room fell silent. Daniels insisted that something must be wrong with the system, refusing to admit he'd made a mistake. But the senior officer on duty exchanged a knowing glance with the others. They could all see it. The evidence didn't justify the arrest, and the woman Daniels dragged in clearly wasn't who he assumed she was. Tension hung thick in the air as they uncuffed her, offering a curt, uncomfortable apology. Elena simply nodded, saying nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. The storm had begun, and its aftermath was about to shake the entire department. When Elena finally stepped out of the station, the night air felt colder than she remembered. The officers had handed back her belongings with stiff, uneasy expressions, each one aware that what had happened was wrong, yet none willing to say it out loud. Daniels avoided her gaze entirely, staring at the floor as though hoping she would simply disappear. Elena didn't demand explanations or raise her voice. Instead, she walked away with a quiet, controlled grace that made the guilt in the room even heavier. But once she reached her car, the weight of the humiliation settled over her. She sat behind the wheel for several minutes, hands trembling, replaying the arrest in her mind, the disbelief in the eyes of bystanders, the sting of the handcuffs, the officer's refusal to listen. She knew better than most how deeply bias could shape decisions, yet experiencing such blatant disrespect firsthand cut deeper than she expected. That night, sleep refused to come. Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spiraling between anger, sadness, and something far more painful, disappointment. She had spent her entire career upholding the law, defending the Constitution, and teaching young people that justice would prevail. But in that moment, she wondered how true that really was. Even so, she resolved one thing before dawn broke: she would not let this incident define her. Tomorrow she would walk into her courtroom stronger than ever, ready to show exactly who she was. And someone else would discover it too, in the most unforgettable way. The next morning, Officer Daniels arrived at the courthouse for what he assumed would be a routine day, unaware that fate was about to confront him with the truth. As he stepped into the bustling courtroom, his eyes fell on a figure moving confidently toward the bench, a woman in full judicial robes, radiating authority and composure. His stomach twisted, heart pounding, as he realized the woman was none other than Elena Brooks, the same person he had arrested the night before under the false claim of a stolen vehicle. Time seemed to slow for him. Whispers rippled across the room as other court attendees noticed his stunned expression. Elena's calm, unwavering gaze met his, and for the first time, Daniels truly saw the gravity of his mistake. The courtroom, once routine and mundane, now became a stage where justice, dignity, and accountability were about to collide in a way he would never forget. As Judge Elena Brooks took her seat at the bench, Officer Daniels froze in his tracks, his mind spinning as the reality of the situation hit him like a wave. The woman he had arrested just hours before, handcuffed and humiliated under the false accusation of a stolen vehicle, was now the very judge presiding over the courtroom. His face flushed with embarrassment, and his heart raced as he realized the gravity of his mistake. Every decision he had made the previous evening flashed before him: the hasty assumptions, the aggressive tone, the unnecessary escalation, all leading to this moment of undeniable reckoning. Elena, fully aware of his presence, maintained her composure, her calm gaze meeting his in silence, conveying both authority and the quiet power of truth. In that instant, Daniels understood the stark contrast between rash action and measured judgment, and the weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. The courtroom, once ordinary, had transformed into a stage where accountability, dignity, and justice collided in a way he would never forget. The hearing began with Elena presiding over the courtroom as if nothing had occurred, her voice calm yet commanding, carrying the weight of authority that only years of experience could bring. Officer Daniels sat in stunned silence, acutely aware that every decision he had made the night before now seemed reckless and embarrassing. Elena handled the proceedings with poise, demonstrating fairness, clarity, and professionalism, never letting the previous night's events cloud her judgment. Her presence served as a subtle yet powerful reminder of the responsibility officers bear when exercising authority. Witnesses and attorneys watched in awe as she conducted the session seamlessly, her words precise, her demeanor unshakable. For Daniels, it was a moment of reckoning, the realization that one hasty decision could undermine not only his credibility, but also the trust placed in him as a law enforcement officer, hit him like a jolt. By the end of the hearing, it was clear to everyone in the room: justice is not about assumptions or power, but about restraint, knowledge, and respect, lessons Daniels would not forget. After the hearing concluded, Judge Elena Brooks addressed the courtroom and later the public with remarkable composure and clarity. She spoke not with anger, but with measured words that highlighted the dangers of assumptions, bias, and hasty judgment. She recounted the events of her arrest, carefully explaining how racial profiling and a lack of due diligence had led to a humiliating, unnecessary ordeal. Her speech was a lesson in dignity and resilience, emphasizing that justice must be grounded in fairness, respect, and verification, not prejudice or power. Officer Daniels, seated quietly, listened as she articulated the emotional and professional impact of the incident, how a single wrongful arrest could tarnish a person's dignity and shake public trust in law enforcement. Elena's message resonated far beyond the courtroom. It became a call for accountability, a reminder that even those sworn to uphold the law must be held to the highest standards. Through her words, she transformed her personal ordeal into a teachable moment that demanded reflection, reform, and a renewed commitment to justice. The aftermath of the arrest sent ripples through the police department and the community alike. Video footage of the encounter had circulated online, drawing widespread attention and sparking outrage over the officer's actions. Internal Affairs quickly opened a formal investigation into Officer Daniels' conduct, reviewing his decision-making, training records, and the circumstances surrounding the arrest. Daniels faced mounting pressure from his superiors, colleagues, and the public, all demanding accountability for the mistake. The department suspended him pending the outcome of the investigation and required him to attend mandatory bias and sensitivity training. Community leaders and advocacy groups weighed in, calling for systemic reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. Daniels, who had once prided himself on quick judgment and decisive action, now confronted the humbling reality that a single lapse could unravel his career. Meanwhile, Judge Brooks' integrity and composure shone as a beacon, demonstrating how dignity and patience could not only survive a wrongful arrest, but inspire positive change throughout the system. In the weeks following the incident, Officer Daniels faced both personal and professional reflection. The shame of arresting a respected judge weighed heavily on him, forcing him to confront his biases and question the impulsive decisions that had led to such a public humiliation. At the same time, Judge Elena Brooks continued her work with unwavering professionalism, using her experience to advocate for fairness and accountability in law enforcement. The two eventually met privately, a meeting charged with tension but guided by mutual respect. Elena spoke candidly about the impact of the arrest, emphasizing the importance of empathy, restraint, and thorough investigation. Daniels listened, humbled and remorseful, realizing that redemption required acknowledgement, learning, and a commitment to change. What could have been a story of ruin for both parties instead became a transformative experience, one where accountability met compassion, and where a moment of grave error became a lesson in integrity, awareness, and personal growth. By the end of their conversation, Daniels understood that his future as an officer depended not on fear or bravado, but on the humility to recognize his mistakes and the courage to correct them. The story of Judge Elena Brooks and Officer Daniels is a powerful reminder of the fragile line between authority and accountability, and the profound impact a single decision can have on another person's life. It shows that even those sworn to uphold the law are not immune to human error, bias, or assumptions, and that dignity, patience, and truth can prevail over rash judgment. Judge Brooks' composure, professionalism, and courage transformed a humiliating moment into a lesson for the entire community, while Officer Daniels' experience became a humbling call to reflection and growth. Their story highlights the importance of empathy, fairness, and the responsibility that comes with power. Thank you for watching this incredible story on Swift Tale. If it inspired you, moved you, or made you think about the importance of accountability and justice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us continue sharing real-life stories that educate, inspire, and remind us all why integrity and compassion matter more than ever.